Good evening. It is Saturday, February the 13th. This is the Chucktown Wind Report. It is about 9:45 p.m. and let's talk about winds and weather for the next 2 days as we see an interesting cold Arctic blast pattern start to break on Monday. So right now what we have is a dome of high pressure sitting over the Great Lakes that's going to move over towards the northeast United States, set up in this area. What that's going to do is drive a northeast to east-northeast wedge down the coastline. We're starting to see a little bit of that tonight. The gradient, I believe, is going to be tightest down in this area of central to southern Florida down to the Keys, just behind that cold front, that weak cold front that dropped through today. But we could see a nice little moderate gradient develop along our area as well with some of this near-shore troughing. It really depends on the air temperatures. Now, some of the models are suggesting that we're only going to see upper 30s to near 40 degrees tomorrow, and that's mainly from this Arctic surge dropping down from Canada along the jet stream. So that means tonight we're going to see some low to mid 20s and possibly even mid-teens, low to mid-teens for wind chills if the winds start to come up by early morning. So we have to be on the lookout for that. One thing that we could see from a northeast to east-northeast wind, if it's not too much of an angle from high to low, we call that cold air advection, where that higher, cooler, dense air drops down from higher levels and sort of comes down over the coastline. But if we get that surface mix where the warmer sea surface temperatures of about 51 to 52 degrees, actually more like 50 to 51 now, we could see a nice little gradient build along the coastline just along the barrier islands. Because of that, we could see a little bit of that east-northeast sea breeze oscillation build just from that warmth from the water mixing with that cooler air that's over the area right now. So with that said, we could easily see 12 to 16 knots develop along the beaches tomorrow, and with that temperature gradient, I'm even looking at possibly calling for 15 to 19 knots. So there's some really good potential for that, probably medium to high confidence for 15 to 19 knots, 15 to 19 knots to develop. So we'll keep that on the mind. Now, as we get into Monday, that high pressure moves out over the Atlantic, and then what we have is this mid-level impulse here drops down into this area where it develops a winter storm for this section right here, the upstate South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. Basically, where all 5 or 6 of these states converge right here is where low pressure is going to develop, and we're going to see some Gulf moisture pulling up along this area to meet this cold air. High pressure is going to have convergence, a southeast convergence component to that, and then as low pressure develops, we see a southwesterly convergence. So over our area, we could see a southerly wind meet some 12 to 16 knot values, or even higher than that, with some of that forcing, and that would be minus marine layering because the air is going to be cooler around that low pressure. And we could possibly see a nice little gradient build into our area. We could see 12 to 16 knots or even higher on Monday. So not for certain yet. If that low tracks a little bit further to the west, we could be only looking at some variable winds or maybe some light northerly winds stay down over our area. So that's to be determined. But as far as tomorrow, that's more of a definite for some winds to occur. So if you're looking for winds tomorrow, might be the day to go take a look at it. So here's data scope for the Charleston area. Right now, here's the gradient up at Winyah Bay at 17 knots, gusting to 20. That could be a little bit indicative of what our gradient could look like for tomorrow afternoon. That's not for certain either, but we're going to watch and see what the northeast wedge does with that high pressure as it moves further to the east towards the northeast United States. Right now in Charleston, things are pretty quiet. Things are starting to cool down. We're about 40 degrees now, 40.7 degrees in the harbor at 8 knots. You see that east-northeast lean going on right now, gusting to 10 knots. The beaches are a little bit less on the land-shadowed side, 6 knots at Isle of Palm, 7 knots at Folly Beach. And we won't see those numbers start to climb until the sun comes up tomorrow. We could see some morning pulses just as the sun comes up, and then come down and then rise back up again late morning. Let's look at the details for the area. Here's some of the model guidance. Let me blow this up so you can see it a little bit better. And you can see the spread. Now, most of the models are in agreement on the directions here. It's the speeds they're disagreeing on. So the higher resolution model here, the HRR, the one in the red, is showing the winds coming up between 10 and 11 a.m. And that might be a little bit on the right side, is on the correct side as far as what the winds are going to do. And that depends on the air temperature. So here's our low teens to mid to even upper teens for 12 p.m. I think these numbers right here are a little bit on the low side. By 1 o'clock p.m., I think most of the winds are going to start to show some peak values somewhere between 1 and 3 p.m. So like I said, 12 to 16 knots with very good potential for 15 to 19 knots. And you can see here on the air temperature values that most of the models are betting on the lower side for it. Let's go into Sunday here. And the models are only keeping some of the high temperatures up in the upper 30s to near 40. Some models bring it up. I think the NAM 12 brings it up into the low 40s. If we do get some of that mixing at the surface, the actual beach temperatures along the barrier islands, right there at the surface, might be up in towards the mid to upper 40s. All right, so let's take a look at the GFS 0.5 degree forecast, and for tomorrow it's showing that build in the morning time actually shows the pulses, and then it backs down throughout the day. So there again, the model guidance there is not always what you're looking for, but as far as human guidance, that's what I'm going to be calling for. Instead of it backing down, I'm going to have it coming up and then backing down later in the daytime. For Monday, here's that southerly convergence I was talking about in the afternoon, where we're seeing the GFS is showing 13 knots and then gusting to 21. That could actually be correct. That's just one model guidance there, but something to be on the look for. And as we get into Tuesday, we see a frontal boundary drape down along south of that low pressure, and then pass through the area, and the westerly winds come up behind it and then fade later. So the GFS looks like it's a little bit more on track with what could actually occur, except for tomorrow on the east-northeast breeze. Sometimes this undercuts the speeds by several knots, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But that's going to do it for the Chucktown Wind Report. And if you're going out, suit up good, because that water temperature is down to about 50 degrees now, and the air temperatures aren't going to be of much help. So suit up and take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot for watching.